water to wash. That's it. And for you guys who are really into photography, I'm using a 4-stop neutral density filter. Just in case you get questions later. So, when I started sharing photos on social media, I started sharing photos of the blue hour. And the blue hour for me is the point where the sun has already dipped below the horizon, but it's not full dark outside. Okay? So what you actually get is a harmony between natural and artificial light. We can still see some of the detail in the rocks, we can see some of the detail in the trees, and we see the beautiful lights from the city. So this is the twilight of the blue hour. And this is where I've started to focus most of my photography over the last few years, has been focused on this blend of different types of light. And I go all over the world and find these places that I think are going to be beautiful with this balance of light. So traditional landscape photographers are always trying to get a human element out of their shots. They don't want artificial light. I'm looking for areas that harmonize with their environment. Again, if we're talking exposure, this is a 13-second exposure. Your storm comes in, but you see the warm light against the cool background. And Paris here is something very iconic, the gargoyle overlooking the blue hour and obviously the Eiffel Tower in the background. If you guys want this shot for yourself, Notre Dame is open during the summertime. They stay open until midnight. You can actually stay up there for sunset. Very beautiful. But again, the blue hour, again, house that. You guys are European, you get to see this stuff all the time. I was born in America, all I get to see is building. I think our politicians are the oldest things we have in our country. You guys have beautiful architecture. This doesn't just work in Europe, obviously this works on the 86th floor in Dubai as well, which is where I'll be next week. So cityscape photography, also really fun with the blue hour. We get to see all this tremendous detail. Gives us the opportunity to also capture some really cool events like lasers, light shows in Singapore. This is the stuff that really makes me excited as a photographer this specific time of day. I was recently in Bhutan, and I stayed up there and shot the blue hour in Bhutan as well. It was a really beautiful shot. So all over the world, I'm looking for places where I can use a harmony of artificial light and natural light together. Everything else too. Once you pinpoint those times of day, we're looking for weather. So we're looking for weather events, things that are abnormal. Things like fog, like this valley fog swirling around the valley and creating this beautiful composition in Meteora. Or a lot of places that you can go, you guys have been here to Tuscany. Many of you have gone to Tuscany wanting ground fog, looking and waiting for that ground fog. I spent 8 mornings waiting for this fog to happen. 8 mornings driving around in the dark, taking photos in the dark, waiting for the fog. Guess what I did on the 9th morning? Nothing. But 8 mornings to be able to get the weather conditions that I wanted. After that, it comes down to, for me, in my photography, what I try to do is I create the extraordinary. So I'm looking for a blend of natural light, artificial light, and now cosmic elements. I love astrophotography. And many of you guys know this is Petra Jordan. I know it from my childhood, from Indiana Jones. Maybe you guys too, that was my motivation. You can buy an Indiana Jones hat if you want to go there. They sell them. My nephew tells me it was in Transformers, the new Transformers, I'm not sure. So it's inspiring a new generation as well. Astrophotography is really beautiful. It gives you the ability to grab something that's already iconic, like somewhere Santorini in Greece, and then using a series of exposures create something like star trails. Now I've done this in New Zealand recently, the Church of the Good Shepherd. Does anybody know the difference? This is really interesting. You notice how the stars in the center are almost straight. This is called the celestial equator. In other words, if I shoot along the equator, the stars are going to be going straight. If I shoot north or south towards the pole, I get the rotation around the sky. And here in Indonesia, I was able to create something that looks like it's literally an alien world. But I promise you, this really does exist. This is Mount Bromo. It's the dormant volcano, the one that's half crumbled. And Semeru in the background. It's very beautiful. So, putting it all together is something that I like to do in post-processing. And putting it all together to create the perfect memory is something that I really try to focus on. I tend to leave the camera in the same place for a long time. So what you're actually seeing here is not just the blue hour, you're actually seeing a sunset combined with the blue hour. So what I've done here is I've actually taken about 30 minutes of time and put them together into one photograph. Well, think about this. Think that you're in Oia, Santorini, you're in Venice, you're in Rome, you're somewhere beautiful with somebody that you love, and you watch the most beautiful sunset you've ever seen in your life. You take a photo on your camera, you take a photo even on your iPhone, you get back home, You show your friends and family, you show them the photo, and the first thing you do is you say, but you don't understand how wonderful it was to be there. What made it so wonderful to be there that you're trying to represent in the photo? It's your senses, right? It's what you heard, it's what you were thinking about. Maybe it was the smell of the coffee in Venice or the smell of the seafood in Greece. Maybe it was the company you had. It was all these things. We translate these senses into photography. The way that I can translate these senses into photography is by using time. So what I try to do is blend the best moments of the time to represent a series of moments into one collective photo that represents my memory of the location. And that's when I'm able to use controlled elements, like waiting for the gondola to be in the right order. Different things like that. Or waiting for the lights to come on, the cherry blossoms when I'm in Japan. So these are just photography techniques. This photo here was something that I spent 2 years trying to capture because Mount Fuji is typically covered by clouds. So I see some nods in the audience. Anybody who's been here knows how frustrating Mount Fuji, if there's one cloud in the sky, it's stuck right on top of Mount Fuji. But here you see, this is a blend of different time. I have light illuminating the cherry blossoms from below. I have light illuminating the pagoda. You see the pagoda is illuminated on the left. And then the sunset is actually still illuminating the side of Mount Fuji from the other side. So a bunch of different lighting put together. This was sort of where my photography was going. And I thought, you know, if I'm already doing this much, what else can I do? What's next? What's the next logical step that I can take to get something that nobody else has seen before? And what I decided it was going to be was aerial photography. So I started taking contracts with helicopter companies. And this was shot in Queensland, Australia, and I actually caught a double rainbow over Surfer's Paradise. This was obviously extremely lucky to catch a double rainbow while you're in a helicopter. But I traveled around, I started to work with different helicopter companies and get some really cool shots. But what I learned about helicopter photography and this type of photography is it's extremely expensive. In fact, for tours in Queensland, to send me up for 15 minutes with a helicopter over Surfer's Paradise cost them $1,000 for 15 minutes. So I figured, this is not sustainable. I can't spend thousands of dollars trying to get one photograph in this one place. It's just too many variables, too much at stake. And that's when this happened. This was Photo Keynote in 2014. I happened to be, you know, after presenting at Photo Keynote, what do you do in Cologne? You go drink a bunch of beer with your friends. So I happened to be somewhere in a beer garden, and if you guys know fstoppers.com, the founders of fstoppers.com, we started talking. We started, you know, we said, what if we created a landscape photography tutorial? What would it take? And we got to the planning stages a couple months later. We decided we were going to go to 7 different countries, and we were going to film the ultimate landscape photography tutorial. And they told me at the time that they wanted to bring a drone. They wanted to bring a Phantom 2. So the first place that we went was Iceland. And I had never flown a Phantom 2 before, I had never flown a drone. But within 5 days, the footage that we were starting to get blew our minds. And we were able to put together this small promo. This was the first thing that we put together using a drone. 5 days in Iceland. December 2014, I was hooked. I said, I have to get one of these. This has to happen. This is the coolest thing I think I've ever used. Just the possibilities are endless. So after we filmed in 7 countries, I went to Japan and I flew a little bit to sort of promote and get some different footage, some aerial vantage points of some places that I hadn't seen before, and it was amazing. Now this was in April for last year's cherry blossom season, and then in May I happened to be in Shenzhen, and I had a meeting at DJI headquarters, and it was when they were developing the Phantom 3 Pro. And they told me that they could send me a prototype to use in Italy. And I was very excited. I was like, great, this is going to be exciting. You guys saw me fly outside. I'll obviously have a live view. Everything that you saw in Iceland was done without having any visual at all. We were just flying, looking at it, and deciding whether or not we liked the shots, coming back and reviewing the footage. So the idea of having real-time 4K interaction was amazing. But the first thing I had to solve was, how am I going to get this to Italy? In fact, I was in Singapore, and luckily, Big Tank Photo developed a bag that would hold it. So you can see, here's what I had was the Phantom 2 on the left. This is how we were traveling in Pelican case. So I ended up getting this bag called a Helipack that held the Phantom 3, plus all of my photography gear and everything else too. So that was first thing solved. It fits in a backpack. Fantastic. Next thing, let's go ahead and start flying in Italy. So if you guys were outside with me, remember when I said your first flight should be somewhere where you're really confident? Somewhere safe, maybe in a park? This was my first flight in Rome. I wouldn't recommend it. I was able to come away with some really beautiful perspectives of Italy that I hadn't seen before. And this was just experimenting with, at the time, a prototype of what has become a staple in aerial photography now, the Phantom 3. So these places that I had seen dozens of times in Italy, now it was like seeing them with new eyes, fresh perspective. Even Rome, somewhere I've been dozens of times, my family actually lives, I was able to see from a new perspective. And I can show you guys another video. So the other thing that I found that was very interesting is coming from just strictly working with photo and concentrating on photo, that when I started flying, in between taking photos, I'd be taking video. And I started to find this sort of inner struggle of when I should take a photo and when I should do video. Because when you start flying and you see that real-time feedback, you start to notice how beautiful things seem in motion. So this is a video that I put together a week after I had the Phantom 3 prototype. When they sent me the Phantom 3, they only gave me 1 battery. So I had 6 days in Italy with 1 battery, and this is what I actually came up with. The music's downplayed for